In this video, I'm going to go through the notes for section 1.1. This is points, lines, and planes. Everything in this video is going to refer to this diagram here. And so this is a plane, right? This is a single plane here. And there's a line going through it. So this P, would be the point of intersection. This part of the line is coming up above the plane. And then we can see this is coming out the bottom. The dotted part is the portion of the line that we can't see because it would be behind the plane. And then we see this part again through the bottom. So the first thing on here is talking about how do we name a line. And there are two different ways that we can name a line. So the first way that we can name a line is using any 2 points. Using any 2 points on the line. And it doesn't matter what order those points are in. And so I'll do an example in just a second. The second way that we can do that is using the lowercase letter that is right next to the arrow of a line. So using the letter next to the arrow. Next to the arrow. So let me do a little example down here. If I had this line here, and on this line are, just say points A and B, and there's a little letter down here. Let's say that letter down here is E. So there are two different ways that I could name this line. I could call it AB. And it's really important we use this notation with the line over top. We could also reverse that and call it BA. Order doesn't matter. Or we could say line E, because we have that E right next to the arrow. So 2 points or this here. So in these notes, I'm going to pause at different times and recommend that you kind of try things by yourself. This is a way for you to check in with yourself. So this would be one of those places. So choose a line from the diagram and name it in 3 different ways. So I would pause, try that by yourself, and then come back and kind of check in with yourself. So I will pick this line right here. And so one way that we could name that would be ST, since those are 2 points on the line. So we could call this line ST. Make sure you have your arrows. We could call it line PT, because P is another point on that line, or we could call it line M, because there's that M right here, right next to that arrow. That tells me that that M goes with this line, and we can call that line M. Next thing we're going to look at, how do we name a plane? So again, there are 2 different ways. First way, any 3 points. Any 3 points that are on the plane, right? They have to be on the plane that we're trying to name, and are not all on the same line. All on the same line. And the second way, similar to the line, is by the uppercase letter in the corner of the plane. And now this is a place where I would recommend that you pause and just try this on your own, because there's very few examples in this. So when I show you an example in part A, that's going to be it. So the way that we could name this, any 3 points on the plane, not in the same line. So I could do STV. Okay, I could call this plane STV. Those are 3 points on the plane. They're not all on the same line. It's okay that 2 of them, S and T, are on the same line. We just can't have this all 3 be on the same line. We could also call it SPV or PVT. Those would all work. The other way is by this letter in the corner, this plain R. Okay, notice that this R isn't next to a point. It's not next to an arrow. It's all by itself in the corner of the plane. That's how I know it's plain R. The only point that we couldn't use that's on this diagram is Q. because remember, that is up above the plane. That's coming up off of it. So plane SVP, I'll just write that one down. Plane SVP, right? There's no notation above the letters for a plane, or we said plane R, because that's the big letter in the corner. Next is a segment. If we're going to name a segment, there's only one way, and that is we name it by the endpoints. And there is a little notation again, so let's look up. Lots of different segments. There's a whole bunch of segments, right? Because a segment is just part of a line. So we could talk about segment SP. That would be this segment right here. And if that's the segment that we're naming, let me just do it up here so that we can see it. That would be SP, just a line over it like that. We could talk about segment PQ, right? And that would be this segment right here. And we would call that PQ. Again, order doesn't matter. The line that goes above the letters does not have arrows on it because it's a segment. It ends at both sides. And when we're talking about a diagram, we want to make sure that it's a segment that does exist, meaning that this is an actual line segment on our paper. We wouldn't want to say VT, right? Yes, we could make a line segment between those two, but there isn't one actually on the paper right now. So we don't want to say that a segment exists here when it doesn't at the moment. Okay, so that is the only way that we name a segment. You might want to try to name another one by yourself. Number 4, how do we name a ray? So naming a ray is a little bit, the order is a little bit more important. So the first letter in naming a ray, first letter is the endpoint. And the second, I always say it like this, the second letter is the direction. So if we remember, a ray has one endpoint and then it continues on in some direction forever and ever and ever. So if I'm going to name a ray, the first letter in my name has to be this point, and then the second letter can be any point that's this direction, okay, because that tells me which direction it's going from the endpoint. So let's look up at an example. Again, I want to use an existing line here, and since this goes on forever in this direction, okay, I could think about it ending here, and if it goes on in this direction forever, I could call this ray PT. Okay, so this could be ray PT because P would be where I'm saying that it's going to stop, and T, it goes in this direction forever and ever. I could talk about ray PQ. That would go like this. I could talk about ray TS. That would go like this. Ray TP would be the same exact ray because notice T is the endpoint, and then P and S both just give this same direction of going to the left. So on the paper, I'm just going to write PT. That'll be my example. But as we've seen, there are quite a few. And in the notation, the arrow always goes to the right, even if it looks like the ray goes to the left. So we could have like TS. The arrow in the notation still goes to the right. Opposite rays. So opposite rays are two rays that have the same endpoint, and we say that they form a line, meaning that when I put these two rays together, they form a complete and straight line so that it extends in both directions forever, and they share the same endpoint. So let's look at what those might be. There's only one example on here, so this might be a good point to pause and try to figure out what that example is. In this example, I could have ray PT, so it starts at P and goes toward T. And then the ray opposite of this, nope, I can't do two colors at once. The ray opposite of this would be ray PS. Okay, because when I put these two together, I'm going to go back to red here. So this would be ray PT, and then this would be ray PS, and when I put them together, they form a complete line, and they share that endpoint P. So the only example of that on here are rays PS and PT. Collinear. When we talked about this in class, we talked about that prefix co, so cooperate, collaborate, co-worker, meaning kind of like together. And then linear has to do with a line, right? Anything, when we talk about linear, we're talking about something to do with a line. Collinear just means on the same line. So we're usually talking about points if we're talking about collinear points. So any points that are on the same line. So part A, again, I would pause, check your diagram, maybe come back. So 3 points that are collinear. There's only one line that has 3 points on it, and that's this one. So we could say that points S, P, and T are collinear because they are all on the same line. So we would say points S, P, T are collinear. And then finally, coplanar. So just like collinear means on the same line, coplanar means on the same plane. And we don't have an example here. I didn't ask you to give an example, but we could think about what these might be. So if this is our plane, right, plane R, we have points, we have lines on this plane, we could talk about rays on this plane, so we could talk about a lot of different things being collinear. So for example, we could say point V and line M are collinear. They are both on the same plane. We could say point T and point S are collinear. We could say ray PT and ray TS are collinear. Okay? Anything that is on the same plane.